on the road again, headed to Lake George, New York, to the King Phillips Campground. And I'm here with my driver, Kevin, and the boys are in the back seat. Say hi, Darwin. Hi, Murdoch. We're headed west on the I-90 into New York. Pick up Route 87 to head north up to the Lake George region. And this will be our first time at this campground, the King Phillips Campground. It's about a mile or so away from the village of Lake George, at the bottom of the lake. So we will get some information about this place and share it with y'all. It's the Adirondack Mountains out there in the distance. Lake George is the next exit.
The King Phillips Campground is located just off Route 9 in the town of Lake George, New York. It's directly across from the Magic Forest Kids Amusement Park. The campground sits about a mile south of the village of Lake George, which lies at the very southern tip of Lake George. There is a trolley stop right at the campground entrance if you want to avoid the mile drive into the village. Or if you're into biking, the bike trail runs right near the campground. It goes as far south as Glen Lake and north to the southern tip of Lake George. We were put into Site W2, which is right across from the playground and the main bathhouse. The site was a little too close to the other sites for our liking, but the trailer fit and the site was very level. If we're ever to go back to the campground, we will probably try to stay a little higher up on the hill, towards the back of the campground. The sites there were much more spread out and offered a lot more privacy. Another thing we didn't find clear enough was the campground map used different letter number color combinations on it, but it wasn't listed in the map key, so it was difficult to determine which sites had full hookups versus just water and electric. It makes it very difficult when you're trying to pick out a site. While the sites were pretty well laid out, one of the things we really didn't like is the way the electric was run throughout the campground. The wires and electrical breakers were strung in and run down attached to the trees. It didn't feel like the safest setup for the electrical infrastructure. The bathhouses were very well kept up, with the main bathhouse next to the playground right across from our campsite. It was very clean and well maintained. There were several other smaller bathhouses spread out around the campgrounds. This is up near the entrance. The campsite we were in, and most of the sites as you got closer to the entrance, were pretty tight and packed in. Each campsite was very close to its neighbor. They have a propane fill station on site, but I'm not sure how the prices were. It was conveniently located right next to the entrance of the campground. The arcade was well kept and had a decent selection of video games. It has an air hockey table, foosball table, and a pool table. The place is pretty popular. Kids were always hanging out there as we drove by. The camp store and main office is located at the entrance to the campground and is pretty well stocked with supplies. Wood wasn't cheap, but there was a place just down the street selling it for a little bit cheaper. The store carried most things you might need, and if you couldn't find it there was always the local stores you could hit.
I need thousands of inhalers. I need a breath. Definitely get that. That's my life. Let's see how much they are.
campground has a decent-sized in-ground pool, as well as a nice screened-in gazebo. Both were located near the entrance.
So this is the laundromat area. There's a little bench outside. It's open 24/7. And, it's quite nice in here. Some change for the machine, folding areas, dryers, washers. Shirley's Corner for book reading. Very clean.
If you've never been to the Lake George area, there is a lot you can do. From all the shops in the village to local hiking trails and boating on the lake itself, there's plenty to do. The Lake George Battlefield Park is a nice place to check out, and if you're into history, Fort William Henry is a must-see. The tour is well worth the price of admission. Just up the street from the State Beach at the southern tip of Lake George, you can find the Garrison, one of our favorite places to stop for food and a beer. The campground offers free Wi-Fi, but I found their terms and services to be fairly unclear. It gave you no real information on how much bandwidth you would get or what your data quota might be. In the end, we just used their cellular hotspot to stream our television. Overall, we like the convenience of the King Phillips Campground, but mainly for its close proximity to Lake George. We enjoyed our stay, but if we were going to visit again, we'd probably look at another campground.